across the top wide that wrapped around this whole feature on the wall. Now,
you mean
also,
like a circular staircase type feature?
it was a it was some type of, it's, you know, nickname it a staircase coming up to this altar, or not to refer to as religious altar. It could have just as well, they had a fire in there. There appears to be, and the geologist agreed with me, a lip around the edge that something could have fit in there. Had it been metal, shiny or something, you put a fire in there, you're looking out at ocean waters, flooded river waters, you've got a perfect reflection. That's just, you know, an assumption, but nevertheless, a possible use. Above it is a ledge and other openings, and you get on the website, you'll see these photographs, and you'll see a rendering, an artist rendering that I did of the whole dig from hundreds of photographs that I took and numbered and took particular care in this recreating the drawing of this wall, get every stone correctly as it was to show the whole picture. And you can get on this website and see that in many, many pictures. But that was some of the features on the wall that we found. Another thing, at 32 feet, I began to dig up lots of sand dollars. Arachidea. Arachidea is their scientific name, but they're sand dollars you find on the beach. And in doing so, and then we were getting into sandy loam through this blue shale. In doing so, finding them, I would crack them open, and there'd be fresh meat in there. Of course, this is damp soil going down, and consistent temperatures. But what I saw immediately was this is not millions of years old. It's thousands, tens of thousands of years old, or they would have been petrified by then with the history of geology, the ups and downs and uplifts and cover-ups and everything. These should have been petrified to be a 2 million year old exposed wall in calm ancient oceans that receded. So that got my attention that, well, we're looking at something not millions of years old, but in the thousands year old range. Which leads us, you know, to a dating aspect. Before we get into more refined dating in this geological time here, would like to make another note that I found in the dig. And that is, in digging out, excavating the wall, parallel with the wall, out about 30 feet from it so we could turn the dozer around and get material out and control the water and so forth from rains. I dug a cross-section up to the wall about 30 feet wide, and it got wider than that as we went, removing the overburden. And that's where it stood out at me. Soil composition, Rockwall, the first few feet down to 15, typical 15 to 20 feet. When we lay foundation, we dig pier holes for buildings, and the average is about 16 feet on a pier hole, getting us into the blue shale, which is stable, solid material to set foundations on. Above that is what's known as the caliche, which is a white clay. And it has a real expansive nature to it. And what we did with this caliche, we got a large test tube and filled it full of the caliche. It had been dried, sifted in there, and started dropping water in it, drops, and let it saturate. And when it got to full saturation, the 2 inches of soil we had in there rose to 7 inches. So that's how expansive this soil material is. That's above the blue shale. And that's why all the buildings in Rockwall require us to get through it or either use post-tension slabs and float on it, because it's some of the most horrible soil conditions in the country because of its expansive nature when it gets wet. So getting through that and looking back at the profile, the cross-section of the wall, I saw the caliche and the blue shale. And coming out from the wall, they were steeply spiked, maybe 25, 30 feet spikes, of blue shale going almost to the surface, or caliche clay going down. And as you got out from the wall, these peaks began to widen out. So what it did show me, and I got other scientists looking at the mechanisms to agree with me, is that the cover-up of this wall of the overburden was done in a catastrophic event. It was slammed, pushed up against the wall. And here's the evidence of that. It was not sedimentary, that just solely oceans receded and left it covered. It was a catastrophic event. Well, then that brings us back to the question, well, when and how was the wall covered? Well, in looking back at history, geological history and scientific history, we know of the events on Earth either through meteorite impacts or different calamities happened in the world going back. There was an event about 12,000 years ago that caused worldwide flooding. And before that, I think 18,000 years ago, and then there was been several events, but the most recent one would be about 12,000 years ago, this deluge, which is also known as the Noah's Flood. And we have a perfect mechanism set up by a location for this to happen, because we're on the Trinity River. We have this plateau. Say, imagine this wall stood up there, and from the bottom of the river, which I know the river because I knew the land before it was covered with the lake, the elevation from the bottom of the river out to the Gulf is less than 1% slope. And that continues all the way down through the Trinity Valley down to the Gulf. So if you had a mechanism of something hit in the Gulf that would push all this overburden, i.e. the blue shale, with all its sand dollars and all the other seashells and stuff we see mixed in with this, which is only contingent with this blue shale, and covering this wall, we have an event out there that can easily push up here and hit the wall and cover it because of the slope of its location and slope to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, as it turns out, it's my opinion that what we're covered with is overburden from ocean floor out in the Gulf, which is the blue shale, which is the same material that's there. Now, later on, we found satellite photographs that traces the recession of this water back to the Gulf and leaves pooling of blue shale, and we get this from geological maps, all the way down from Rockwall, all the way down the Trinity through Huntsville and on down to the ocean, poolings of low areas where this blue shale settles. So there was an event that pushed this ocean material up over us, then receded. It's not natural to the area because you get across the Trinity River and other areas of Texas, you dig down, you don't get this same geological column that we have here.
So you're saying, what you're saying is that you think the wall may have been built prior to the flood.
What I'm saying is it had to be built before the flood.
That's what I thought.
Now, why do I say that? Because it was covered up. Now, how do I know it was open before that? Well, we found shark's teeth in the wall. Back in the 40s, one of the judges there, I found newspaper clippings. They were finding shark's teeth lodged in the joints of the wall back then. So we know the ocean was up there at one time. It's just a matter of when. So when you have a calamity like this to push this up, then yes, you're gonna find that profile, and you're gonna find shark's teeth and everything else gathered up to the wall. Now,
okay, we got about 5 minutes.
Wall? Personally, and generally I'll save this for the end, but we might as well talk about it since we're here. It appears to me, because of the sand dollars, because of the shark's teeth in the wall, and because of some dating, and it goes on and on and on, I believe the wall was actually a seawall that supported a plateau between the Trinity River, which is about 90 feet below us in real life, if you take the water away. Because this is a deep canyon. We used to hunt squirrels off the banks of the canyon on the top of these 100-foot oak trees down there when we were kids. And on the back side or the east side of the wall, as we found in satellite evidence, there's ancient mountain range. So in between the river and the ancient mountain range, and you can still see evidence of that from space when you see low sunsets and the curvatures. And actually this ridge, this mountain range, begins, and the pinnacle of it is there in Rockwall, which would come out into the ancient seas there, comes back up and goes north of Denton, turns and pretty much follows 114 out here to Lubbock, and ends up on the Cap Rock here. And at first, when I saw this, I said, "Wow, that's a natural for Indians to herd the buffalo in, come down, trap them off, and have food supply down here." But it turned out to be much, much before then. So, but anyway, that's a unique feature. And what it says here is this wall is situated on a unique geological plateau here, which begins, to mean something here, maybe.
Okay, we got a listener that called.
Now, where were we? I was going before. I wanted to leave the wall.
I'm going to try to get you going here on but one question. We got about 2 minutes before the break.
Okay.
And a listener wants to know if any carbon dating has been done, and he has the same question, or she has the same question about why does SMU not get involved with their archaeological department? And you and I talked about that this afternoon. So about 2 minutes to answer.
Well, okay, there's no mystery to it. It seems all of this seems very simple and easy. Well, why don't you go out and do it? Okay. I have many people, well, why don't you just get SMU, as close university, involved? Let them come look and pronounce it. Well, what people don't realize is SMU and other universities all over program their classes and their events 3 years ahead of time. So it's going to be 3 to 5 years before they can even schedule an event to send these students out or anything. And then they're going to have the monies allocated for it. So just because they're universities and you got something interested, they're already obligated to what they got going and what they do. So it's just not a simple task of having them out and look at this and pronounce something. Now, I've been involved with them in many universities and with this behind the scenes, but that's behind the scenes and I guess off the record. Because of the dating and many other factors here, a lot of universities, let's just say a lot of scientists are reluctant to touch this other than comment negatively on it. And I can understand that. They got jobs, they got things they got to keep, and that's just the nature of where mankind is now. Do we want to know the truth or
okay, got to go to break.
Do we want to live on, what we've been told? I don't know that.
John, we got to go to break. If you want to call in, 888-919-2355 on Epic Voyagers, and we'll be back and we'll talk about some.
When we get back, I want to talk about the composition of the wall and some other interesting aspects of the wall. Okay?
Absolutely, we'll do that.
Okay. Be back with you.
We're going to break. Hey, good evening. Welcome back to Epic Voyagers. I'm Robert McKenzie. Our guest tonight is John Lindsey, talking about the Rockwalls of Rockwall, Texas. And just to plug Epic Voyagers, it's www.epicvoyagers.com. and some really interesting stuff on that website. Go there and take a look. If you'd like to call in, the number is 888-919-2355. Now we're going to go back to John Lindsey and talk about some more specifics on the rock walls of Rockwall. So, John, I understand that you have found an iron ring and maybe some things that look like hieroglyphics or writing. Is that true?
Yes, that's true, and I'll expound on that. First, the iron ring, so supposedly iron ring, in the dig, and again, it was about, let me get my numbers right here, it was about 18 feet down. We have over to, that would be the south of, to the left, facing this dish in the wall and these so-called windows, so forth, about 30 feet down. The wall becomes very serpentine, curved, which could be, which is a structural element. But the stones in that wall are even curved with it, almost as if poured in place. It's just phenomenal to see these stones with their joints and all, and curved stone making these bends in it. Well, in one of these 2-ton stones, I found 2 rings, and one of them I did actually get out. The other one I left to keep it in situ or in place for further research. But consequently, because of events happening, that big stone got displaced, covered up, blah, blah, blah. There's another story behind all that. But nevertheless, I did free up one of the rings that came out of, that's the location of the wall it came out of. And there were 2 of these beside each other. Well, I went over to Garland, I believe it was Garland, and took it to have it x-rayed and to do a metallurgic analysis of it. And got the reports back. Well, inside this conglomerate I took out was an iron ring. In conjunction with it, and we suppose wrapped with it, was tin. Now, among all the elements, I mean, I can see iron being prevalent and being there. But the tin is way out of character here for this location. Tin comes from South America and Russia, and only there. So I have to ask myself, what's that doing here? And what's the significance of it with the iron ring? So that's the iron ring that you see pictures of. I've got it x-rayed. I've got the ring here. I will not allow that to be cut into a cross-section yet to view that, but with the x-rays analysis, we don't really need to destroy that to do that. But that's the story on the ring there. What it's used for, I have no idea. I've got people that's working on that. What can you get from, I know how to make bronze and the other materials, but what do you get from tin and iron? I don't know. They look like almost 2 gigantic, you plug in a plug. Now, if this was a seawall and somebody was coming up here, would that be, that's pure conjecture now. And maybe I shouldn't go any further on this time here, but just trying to describe what it looked like and what it is. I don't know what it is, but that's what it looked like.
And there were also in the photos some horizontal-looking drill holes. Did you do that drilling, or did you find those?
No, we did that on paleomagnetic dating.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I had a Dr. Wolf from the University of Texas come out and did paleomagnetic dating. So we found what I really expected to find, places of consistency showing that this portion of the wall is natural, such as Bud Shelton explains very well in his letter, which is on our website, the mechanisms for that, but not the whole wall. And then we found the chaotic readings above those areas where they went in every direction, they had been placed there or moved around or whatever. So that's what those horizontal holes
Okay.
that you see in photographs were.
Just
For
want to clear that
paleomagnetic
up so
dating.
if anybody in case anybody looks at the photos to make sure that they understand what that is.
Yes, that's what that is. Testing, evidence of testing. Okay.
Okay. What were the
Okay.
Sanders stones, and what about the writing? That it looks as if there's writing.
Okay. Well, since we've been talking about that, let's talk about the writing, and then I want to talk about what this wall really is. It's
Okay.
really not a stone wall; it's a crystal wall. But let me save that for a minute.
Yeah.
And don't let me run out of
Okay.
time here without covering some of these.
Okay. We're not going to let you out of town.
Because I get to having fun here, and time gets away from me.
We won't let that happen.
So don't let that happen. So the writing on the wall in 1949, Mr. Sanders and there were 2 or 3 people out at one of the sites. This was where the 2x2 window was located that I tried to get into, but the landowners wouldn't let me out on the eastern side of the wall. I used to take people out there and look down the well to see it, and right over from that was a pond and people back in those days used the rock wall to make a dam for their ponds. Well, down below that pond is where they found 2 more windows and a doorway, supposedly. And above one of those, they removed a large stone. It must be, I've got detailed photos of it, with a yardstick, and you can see this online too, about 8 foot long, and carved writing or carved characters, inscriptions into it. In this photograph we have, you'll see a jar of black soil that was put into these grooves so that it show up for the photograph. Well, in taking those pictures of the stone, now this stone is still around, but they won't tell me where it is, and it's a very big secret. But we know where it used to be, and I've been promised that it's around, and it would surface again, but that's as far as I can get with it. Nevertheless, I have plenty of evidence from those times and the photographs of the times. And so I spun this around on the computer and brought it around so I could copy the characters of this inscription and get them out in front of me on paper proportionally and correctly done. So I could look at it. Having that and all my other research, one day I think I was into other archaeological books, and I found a coin that had been discovered in Illinois back in, looking for my date here, it was early on. Anyway, it came up from a whale boring in Long Ridge, Illinois, and was found at a depth of 114 feet below the surface. And according to the information supplied by the Illinois State Geological Survey, the deposits containing the coin are between 200 and 400,000 years old. That's pretty phenomenal. Okay, this coin sat in the Smithsonian Institute. So we got photographs of it and everything. And because of it and other research bringing this, let's say it's a coin-like object, bring it to people's attention, all of a sudden disappeared in the archives of the Smithsonian Institute, so you can't get to it anymore. But plenty of photographs, and you have to wonder, well, why did they remove that? All of this coin are inscriptions, characters around it. It's 2-sided, and on one side where the characters are, there's a deity there with a gnarled staff called a bottle gourd hanging, and it's a mortar's receptacle for the elixir of long life. That's what the archaeological books tells us. It's an angel or deity, and that's in the center of the coin. Surrounding this are these letter forms or these inscriptions. Well, I recognized them. So I took those inscriptions off of the coin, just like I did the stone wall, got them all individual, got them on paper, got them correctly proportioned and copied out, and put them in a hat and shake them up, and I've yet to have a scientist or anybody to tell me the difference of where each one came from. In other words, I found this inscription again in a material that's dated 204,000 years ago. Okay?
Wow.
Since then, with one of the Hanby stones, which are just several stones I found out where I was living that were taken from the wall in 1830, from Mr. Hanby, who came from Virginia. He was a mason, real big in masonry, and he collected these stones, which are triangular, and they have inscriptions on them, and he used them as foundations, as they used to in Rockwall houses, and steps. But when he situated them, he put with engraved inscriptions all down into the clay, face down, so it would protect them. So, and where I lived out there at the time, we happened to come across these and got them up, and sure enough, I recognized inscriptions on it. Well, not only did I recognize inscriptions, but we found matching inscriptions on stones coming out of Egypt and from the temple of Khnum in Anzwa. So now I'm beginning to get triangulation of the inscriptions. And with triangulation is how you get decipherment. We're working on that. But now, the dating of this coin and the freshness of the sand dollars and the apparent cover-up of the wall, then I have to date with what I'm looking at can bring it down into 20 to 200,000 years ago this wall was exposed because of where the inscriptions and their timetables and matches are leading me. So that's how I arrive at that supposition at this point in time, which is really a very narrow timeline in the time of geological expansion.
That kind of blows a lot of civilization theories out of the water, if that's true, doesn't it?
I'm sorry, what?
So that sort of blows a lot of our civilization timeline theories out of the water, if that happens, if that's true.
Well, it blows a lot of theories out of the water, and that's why I've got to walk on my tiptoes around this.
I understand.
I've got to be careful because it does it after I got into investigation and started not only pulling out past historic investigations and data, but presenting my own. Then obviously with what I've said, you see a picture that begins to grow. Then you have to ask, well, if we're talking about that age, obviously we're talking about before 10,000, 12,000 years ago when man crossed the Bering Strait and came into North America. We're even talking before Adam and Eve. So who are we talking about? And I tend not to go there right now.
You're treading on some dangerous waters right there.
Right there. The only comments I will make about that, although my studies takes me through that, but I'm going to leave this to others, and I will comment here, is that from the Old Testament, when I say that, I go back to the Hebrew form of it, which is the original 5 books of the Bible that Moses gave us, which our King James New Old Testament was adopted from, almost verbatim. So because of the language changes, I go back to there. And in it is where you find, and in the King James Version, the name Nephilim, the people in Sumerian, of the Sumerian time. This is back in Babylonian time, Sumerian time. Which we're talking about now. We're getting before the flood back into the 20,000 year range. So that's where I get my information on Nephilim. Now, to understand about who those were, Nephilim is a Hebrew translation of the original word, Sumerian word, from the ancient text, Anunnaki. Now, these were dug up. This information was dug up in Nineveh, Iraq, back in the 30s. Thousands of tablets, which are called the Enuma Elish, or the creation tablets, with story upon story of the creation, and on and on and on. So the Anunnaki and the interpretation of that is literally those who came from heaven to earth. Now you've got to understand